Hello, this is Daniel Ritchie, developer of Project Dogwaffle Howler, and I would like to talk with you about our GUI, our user interface, and the changes we've been making for quite a while now. We've taken a little bit of criticism as of version 8 regarding our icon set, and I'd like to talk with some of the changes we've made and some of the reasons we've done the things we've done. Now, back in version 6, we had a fairly nice looking UI. All the icons were big and anti-aliased and very artistic looking, and we had a fairly nice looking color set. It was all designed to work with Windows 7, that nice glass look that they had, and more or less just a system look. It was dark text on a light background, basically, and everything was good. And then Windows 8 came along, and tablets and other types of devices became more popular after that point. And a lot of things started changing in the industry, and we started making changes to account for those styles that were changing. Another thing that happened was Photoshop switched to a single column toolbar, and at some point somebody's going to say, hey, Photoshop did it, so everybody else has to do it. So we just went ahead and said, let's just go ahead and do it. We switched from a two column to a single column toolbar. To accomplish that, we had to use smaller icons. We were trying to accommodate netbooks that had a minimum resolution at the time of 1280 by 768, and we had to use about a 30% smaller icon in order to accomplish that. And that's one of the things that made us go to a simpler, blockier looking set of icons. At the time, we did not have the anti-aliasing code, the alpha blending code, as part of our toolkit. We're working in an older API, and it just didn't have it. We had to add that. We added that as recently, in fact, and as of 9.1, we've had an anti-aliased icon set that it looks really nice, and we're continuing in the next version to expand on what we've done there. Also in 9.1, we switched from dark on light to light on dark rendering, which has become more or less the de facto standard in graphics applications, mostly because people who work in these industries sit in dark rooms and they want to focus on their content, not on their interface. Pretty interfaces are for music programs, and people who work in arts, 3D and stuff, want to focus on their content, not on how shiny the interface is. They call that interface chrome, with all the gradients and little shiny things they put in the interface are just extras. Back in version 6, we had bevels around all our buttons, and that went out of style. It did create some problems, though, when we switched to just flat look icons, buttons, and everything. For one, it was much harder to tell what was what. You couldn't really tell the difference between a button or text string, a label, or you couldn't really make out what was what. And this led to some confusion. We've since started supporting hot tracking, which means buttons will be highlighted when you drag your mouse over them, or your pointer. That will help some. It's not a new idea. This came around in, I think, Windows XP, but we're finally supporting it. Anyways, and so if you drag your pointer over a button, you can see the outline or the highlight. You can now see what that does. This is a button. This is a button, but this is just a label. It's not something you can click on, and just by dragging that over that, you can tell what's what. It's not a total solution, and I'll talk about this later, but we've added the option to go ahead and put that gradient back in there. Some people like them, some people don't, and I think the world's divided on if you want a flat look, if you want gradients, if you want highlights, if you want bevels, whatever. So we just decided to go ahead and support several levels of button styles altogether, so the user can choose what they want. Those things have some purpose. Those outlines and those bevels give you a visual cue as to what's grouped with what. For example, say you had a drop down control. Say this button over here has a drop down. If there were not a highlight around that, you wouldn't be able to tell if that little drop down arrow was associated with this label over here or this label over here, and it would be very confusing. So those can be a visual cue, and I'll go ahead and switch into our one of our other styles. I'll turn off the flat look, and as you'll see now, everything will have a sort of a little button, a raised button, a bulgy button look to it. Now we recommend once you've made these kind of changes, go ahead and restart the program, because we haven't quite got all our updating code running yet. So just go ahead and restart, and then I'll sort it all out. And as you can see here, we now have this new bulgy look, and that's there's also an outline that will make these stand out even more. I'll do that in a bit too. But as you can see, when you get some of these more complex toolbars, these context strips up here, say there may be 3 or 4 rows of just text strings, that could get extremely confusing. And I think these outlines or these little raised bits help you understand what is what. For example, these are just a label, and these are buttons, and they actually do something. And now that the program here in version 9, 9.1, 9.2 has so many features, I think it's important. We didn't necessarily have that many features on the context strip before, but I mean, as you can see, we can get like 4 or 5 of these docked on top of each other if you have everything going all at once. And I think the raised buttons help organize things into a more of a visual cue as to what is what. So that is one change we've been making in Howler. And I'm going to go ahead and close some of these. All right. And there's also an outline mode if you really want to take it to extremes. There's also the ability to give raised look to the items on the toolbar as well. And it could look kind of old-fashioned, but I mean, these are GUI components that have been around for 30 years. They really should look like something you've seen before. They're classic, they're time-tested. We use drop-down menus, we use buttons, we use sliders and scroll bars. These things have been around for a long time, and they're not really going anywhere. They're classic GUI components, they're classic desktop components, and we stand by our metaphor. Now, if you notice some of the newer programs that run on tablets, or Windows 8, for example, the new Metro look in Windows 8, they call it the modern look, which is questionable. It's more of a retro look if you think about it. I mean, they've gone to a simpler style of rendering. If you look at the Metro, the buttons are all very simplified. They're single color sometimes. But the thing that stands out is that they're all good looking, they're anti-alias, they're all very clean and easy to look at. And that's, I think, the point, is the new style is more or less as long as you have clean, readable type, and you can tell what your GUI is doing, how it functions, then everything else you add onto that is really more or less just for looks. So we tried to get the basics right first. We started with the flat look, and we worked from there. We tried to organize our tools in a consistent way. If you look now, we've added consistent spacing between groups of buttons, and we tried to keep it all logical. These are things we've been just pretty much going over the interface pixel by pixel, more or less. We've been changed a few of our codes. We no longer use the system code. We're using our own buttons. We think they're a little bit more consistent for the interface that we're using. For example, these checkboxes. When we use the system supply checkboxes, they would default to using a theme that was generated by the system, and sometimes when we were using this light on dark look, you'd get the wrong color text. It would be a dark text on a gray black background, and it didn't look good. So we went ahead and fixed those things. These are some of the small changes we've been making. We go ahead and also turn off the flat look for this thing. Kind of taking it to extremes here. Got everything bulgy looking. If we wanted to, we could go back to the flat look, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. A few other changes we've been making is people complained about the thick borders that were around windows. That was a system look, and people really wanted more of a graphical look or a professional look. So we've eliminated the thick borders around windows. As you can, let me go ahead and come back in a few minutes. I'm going to shut this down. We're still beta at this point, and every once in a while when we switch these themes, we get it's not as bad as it looks, but one of the controls will steal all the focus and kind of locks the user out. So it's not really a hard crash; it just looks like one. But I'm going to go ahead and end that. And like I said, we're just beta testing at the moment. We're trying to work on our stability. So I'm going to go ahead and restart the program. And that is something we're working on very hard right now, is the stability of the program. We fixed a number of small minor errors. The GUI, I mean for example, the halftone plus, I think it was, had a checkbox where if you apply to an animation, it would apply to the animation even if you were just making tweaks. And we found a bunch of these kind of little small problems as we've gone over everything with a fine-tooth comb. We've gone through every menu item. We're still continuing to work on this, mind you. We haven't really set a deadline for when we're going to be finished. We're kind of wrapping up what we wanted to make, the changes we wanted to make on the GUI at this point. And well, we still haven't come up with a plan just yet as to what is going to be what's going to be in it new feature wise and what's not, but we are able to talk about the GUI a little bit at this time anyways. So another change we've made is, well, I talked about going to a light on dark style. That is optional. As I said before, users who sit in a dark room all day might want that darker background, but some people may still prefer the systems look or the dark on light interface. So we have a lot of different styles. We introduced these a few versions ago, but we've continued to improve on them and expand them. So I will switch to just our regular duck egg style. Let's see, the color of the spaceship from the show Voyager, duck egg, blue. And let's see. Alright, so as I was saying, we've done away with these thick borders on the windows. We've also gone over all these panels, made a lot of little changes. And I said before, anti-aliasing is always good etiquette. We've added anti-aliasing in a number of places. We're using GDI Plus now for most of our interface rendering. So just things like this, you're going to see they're more anti-aliasing than before. This was that little crosshair was blocky looking before, and that's been those kind of things have been updated. We've got some changes on these panels as well, just different tweaks that we think were more consistent with a modern operating system. Sometimes we just move things around, a few pixels around to make them look a little nicer, a little cleaner. We've made the text boxes a single border instead of a double border. They were a little blocky looking, or they'd have funny colors sometimes. I talked about the anti-aliasing. These were kind of ugly looking before, and they've been all anti-aliased and alpha blended. that are looking much better now. The bristle brushes and the orbicals and all that. That's all been updated. And in version 9.1, we've added a new fill settings panel. The old one really looked archaic. It was a holdover from the deluxe paint days on the Amiga. We are a vintage Amiga application. We have a little bit of code left, not very much at all anymore, that originated on the Amiga. We were not strictly an Amiga application. We did start out writing code on the Amiga though, and not much of it shows anymore. We do have a few deluxe paint things that are held over. We still believe in those things. The painting with animated brushes and some of the keyboard shortcuts you'll notice, of course, are very Amiga in nature. But we're doing our best now to modernize, and while still respecting those old things. We also found a bug in the gradient panel that might have caused it to crash under rare circumstances. We fixed that, and continue to make small improvements in regards to stability as well as functionality, as well as cosmetic changes as well. And I do believe I'm getting ready to wrap up. I've talked about the interface, how we've made some small changes. I did want to talk about the new what we're calling what's it called? It's called compact full screen mode. We call it that because we don't have a better name for it at this point. But the idea was, well, basically, we have so many buttons now that we just couldn't fit them on screen anymore. In a very small screen like a netbook. So what we've done was we've combined the menu button and the title bar onto one bar, one context strip, and we've also combined the what we used to call a permanent strip, which is the permanent part of the context strip that was always on screen, which included the zoom and these few buttons here, and we also made the close and minimize and maximize buttons all on that same strip, and that has saved us not only some vertical space, but it's also saved us some horizontal space for these buttons, which had to share their space with this permanent part of the context strip. So we now have much more horizontal and vertical space to work with, so we can still work on those lower resolutions, but now we have a little bit of freedom to add some more tools and get them onto the context strip. This is helpful because it makes tools more accessible instead of having them hidden away inside of drop-down buttons or menus. We're also able to get more features onto this permanent part, such as this new button here that repeats a brush stroke. Say you want to do repeat a brush stroke but change the color, for example, you could just hit that and it would reapply that for you. So those are a few of the changes coming. That compact full screen mode is optional, of course. And I also talked about some of the interface styles. There are a lot of colors. There are these outline modes, and if you want to, you can go to a full flat mode, which I'll go back to now, so we can leave the same way we came in. And that is about it for now. Those are just a few of the changes coming to a future version of Howler Digital Painter. We hope you enjoyed watching. I kind of went on for a long time, and I guess I'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching.